we wrapped up with the first unit where we looked at the concept of curriculum and its related issues, where we said that curriculum is basically the total experiences a learner or a student goes through within the context or the confines of the school, and through that they're able to acquire some knowledge, understanding, and experience to shape their behavior and attitude. And from there, we got to know that there are 4 basic elements. We talk about the aims, goals, and objectives, the subject matter or content, learning experience or methods, and also the last one, which is evaluation. From there, we looked at how do we select content or subject matter, and how do we organize them. And that's why we look at the criteria or principles that should guide the selection of a content, where we talked about the validity principle, comprehensive principle, significance principle, relevance principle, utility principle, the background of student principle, issues of feasibility, learnability, among others. So today we are looking at the next unit, which is the philosophical perspectives of curriculum. Now, when we talk of philosophical perspectives of curriculum, we are looking at what various educational philosophies have argued so far as what curriculum should be. So we are saying that as a society, depending on your philosophical orientation, so far as your belief system is concerned, will go a long way to influence the type of curriculum you advocate for your society. And so I want to look at some of these philosophies and their views so far as curriculum is concerned. Now, the first one we want to tackle on is the perennialism philosophy. Perennialism philosophy. Now, when we say perennialism philosophy, it is one of the oldest educational philosophy that has ever existed. Now, this school of thought argues that there are some ideas or knowledge or some concepts which have existed over centuries. And those ideas are still relevant today as it was conceived in the centuries. And so those ideas that were conceived way back centuries ago, at that time, the question is, were the learner born at that time? Was the learner born at that time? I'm asking a question.
No, please.
Yes. So if the learner was not born at that time, then it presupposes that the elderly person who existed at that time are in a position to transmit these ideas or knowledge that have existed over the years to the learner. And that is why these philosophy believe that the child must be helped by the teacher to develop his ability to reason, his faculty. And that is why their name suggests their name is derived from the word perennial. So normally if you hear people talking about, hey, as for Accra, that when there's heavy downpour, there is this perennial flooding, suggesting that when it is rain, the potential of Accra flooding is very high. That's why we call them perennial, everlasting. So they believe that those ideas that have existed over the years is still relevant today and must be passed on from one generation to the other. That's why we call them everlasting. So so for them, they believe that certain old ideas are relevant to today's world. And so the teacher who is the master of that knowledge, who is an elderly, who existed at that time, should transmit that ideas to the learner. So these are the schools of thought that advocate for subject-based curriculum, where the teacher is the master or the subject specialist to transmit those knowledge to the learner. So they also believe that the human nature is the same everywhere. So education should also be the same everywhere. In fact, that is one of the reasons, one of the things that has underpinned Ghana's education for quite a long time. Ghana was using this perennialism philosophy. That's why, if you remember, it got to a time in our country, they will tell you that when you are a child and you have an issue with an elderly, no matter how good your case is, you become a loser. Have you ever heard of that adage?
Yes.
That our friends say, "Ni penyin nya asama, wa asam ye do danara easy for." Now, then they will tell the opinion, so the opinion in your one. So you see, all these things are from that ideology that, as for the elderly, they can't sing, but the child do not have any mind of his own, just like what John Locke said in the 1965, that the child is tabula rasa and all those kind of things. So they believe that the learner must be helped to develop those things. So they assume that every learner everywhere are the same. That's why in Ghana, we develop one curriculum, one manual, then we give it to all teachers, irrespective of where you are teaching, that take it and teach it. We don't even care whether you have the resources. We don't care whether the infrastructure. So it is underpinned by this orientation. Until recently, that we are trying to move away to the progressivist philosophy of education. But this is what we have been using for over the years as a country. So you see that when elderly people are talking and children will go and want to even correct their parents, then they'll be shouting at them, "Hey, keep." Those kind. Okay. So take note, the perennialists believe that human nature is the same everywhere, and so education should also be the same everywhere. So irrespective of where you find yourself, you should also have access to the same. That's why we develop one curriculum, we send it to every part of the country to use, whether you have the resources or not. Now, they also believe that man is a rational being, and that education should seek to develop in the individual the ability to reason. So they see the teacher to be able to help learner to develop their mindset. So these are the people who advocate for subject-based curriculum, learner-centered, teacher-centered type of curriculum. Okay. Now let's look at their perennialist perspectives of curriculum. They believe that curriculum should be constant and permanent. The curriculum should be subject-centered and emphasize classical subjects. An example of the classical subjects they emphasize are the great books. And those of you who have read the perennialists, the realists, and idealists, you come to know the great books, which started with a list of 100 essential texts. And these great books covers areas like fiction, drama, history, poetry, natural science, mathematics, religion, philosophy, politics, economics, and ethics. So these are the things that they were advocating. That's why you see in the olden days, when our elders are going to the University of Ghana and those people, if you are going to do geography, then they will add philosophy, they will add religion, they will add ontology. You see, these were all things that were emanating from these philosophical orientations. They also believe that the curriculum should focus on the great ideas that have survived through time and are related to present day challenges. So that's how they perceive curriculum to be. Now, how do they also perceive the learner and the teacher? They have already established the fact that there should be a common curriculum for all learners. They have established that. Now, how do they see the learner? The perennialist people believe that the learner should be helped to develop his or her intellectual capacity, because they are tabula rasas, they do not have mind of their own. So the teacher, who is a master and elderly, should help the learner develop his or her intellectual capacity. Learners should enjoy reading, learning, and discussing interesting ideas. Learners must be questioned and probed until they discover the truths in the text selected. And they also perceive that the learners should study the great works of history, philosophy, literature, and science. So this is how they perceive they perceive learners. Also, in terms of the teacher, they believe that the teacher should have the ability to help learners to develop their power of reason. And we are saying that, so here the teacher will more or less be a repertoire of knowledge, a master of knowledge, to help the learner to develop his power of reason. So the perennialists will always fall under the areas of the arts, and also they take most of their ideas from the realists and some the existentialists, depending on the angle. So these are how the perennialism philosophy of education or philosophies argue their view so far as curriculum is concerned. So in brief, they advocate for a curriculum that is common for all learners, because they believe that human nature is the same everywhere. And so for that matter, education must be the same everywhere. And there should be a common curriculum. Learners should be held by teachers to develop their intellectual capacity. And they should enjoy reading the great books, history, philosophy, literature, among others. So that is that for the perennialism philosophy. Now, from the perennialists, we talk about the existentialism. There is another philosophy of education that strongly opposes the behavioral school of thought. They strongly oppose the concept of the perennialist people be that the teacher should help develop the mental ability and faculty and all those kind of things. Now, there's the essentialist school of thought of the view that there should be a total freedom for the learner. And the learner should be allowed to make his own choices, to take his own decisions, and live by his own actions and consequences. What the learner will learn, whatever knowledge and other things, should not be imposed on the learner. The learner should be given that ability to make his own choices, take his own decisions, and live by his own actions and consequences. It shouldn't be imposed. In fact, there shouldn't be anything like curriculum that is teaching the learner, but the curriculum should rather be starting from the learner himself. That's why I say we have the freedom to the learner. So existentialism is a philosophy that focuses on human freedom. And they believe that there are no values outside human beings. Hence, individual freedom to make choices and being responsible for their own consequences out of their own choices that they made is what they argue for. Hence, they believe that reality is what is lived by an individual, not when someone is telling you, not when someone is trying to coach you with, but reality is what you have lived yourself. So how do the existentialists view curriculum? They believe that curriculum should be based on personal choice and individual interest. And this is not the choice of the teacher, but the personal choice of the learner. That is the curriculum about what to teach is decided by the learner, not the teacher. So these are the people who normally advocate for what we call the negotiated curriculum. Negotiated curriculum, this is a type of curriculum where what to teach, how to teach, when to teach is determined by the learner together with the teachers or support. That's what's called negotiated curriculum. So what is taught, how it's taught and all those things is not the preserve of the teacher, but is determined by the learner. And that's why one of our professors went to Denmark to do some sabbatical. And he was in CRS. So he was teaching some kids in Denmark, one of their schools. And as part of the CRS, I think he made mention of the word witchcraft to explain the concept of what they were doing. And the kids were so much interested about witchcraft, and they said, witchcraft, and to the extent that Ghana, we have a camp. So they were interested and said they want to learn the witchcraft. In fact, what they started learning, they couldn't finish. So the prof had to give them about 10 minutes break, went to his office, searched for some information, came back for them to discuss about witchcraft. And these kids were able to travel all the way from Denmark to Ghana for an excursion at Gambaga Witch Camp. They travel all the way from Denmark to the north for an excursion. How many of the Ghanaian schools, our public schools, will learn something maybe outside Ghana and will travel to that place for an excursion? How many? Those headmasters here, try as much as possible to make learning be more interesting and outdoor. Yeah. I know some of you are headmasters here. Even if it's not outside, at least outside your vicinity is also good. To let them have a feel of it. So, in terms of the essentialist, the curriculum starts with the learner rather than starting with the curriculum content. So, they do not have a situation like what we have, where the curriculum has been developed and everything has been prescribed to you, they'll go and teach it in this way. No. For them, that's why they believe in what we call the either negotiated or experiential. Learners' own exploration will lead to the constructing of their own knowledge, just like the constructivism school of thought. So they will use the syllabus that we are using, the teacher's manual, as a guide to what the learners are doing, are learning. And the learning is always based on the interests of the student. Now, let's see how they perceive the learner and the teacher. The essentialists are of the view that the learner must be given the freedom to operate. And this reminds me of the Shatawale song, Freedom. Are the SM fans here? Okay, that's right. Yes, I've seen your presence. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear
But,
dog.
but sir, please, can you start the song so that perhaps they can continue?
Can we do what?
Sir, please, can you start the song so that they can continue?
Now, the song, I don't know how to sing. What I know is that Freedom, Shatta, Wale. My name is Shatta Wale. And that's the only thing that I know. So that is what the essentialist people are also advocating, that they are more of Shatta Wale, saying that give the child freedom, the freedom to operate, allow them to take their own decisions. So it said the learner must be encouraged to make his or her own choices. And teachers, your responsibility is to be frank and true to your learners. Teachers must not impose discipline on their learners. And teachers must encourage learners to think for themselves, not you thinking for them. So this is how they believe the learner. In fact, that's what you go to most of these foreign countries, like the India, China. They will tell you that these phones that we are using, it is their children in high school that they have been doing these things and that we are using. They do not bother so much about this paper and pencil two purpose we are doing here. That's why for them to promote, they want to see your crafts, your innovation, your inventions, what you have been able to create, the new things you have been able to discover. That's why I check something. If you have checked something, when a student is in Ghana and is able to create maybe a car with a milk thing and is able to move or fly something and is able to move, you see the white people, when the moment they see it and they give that child scholarship. Have you noticed that thing? They will not even say, did you pass or you didn't pass? They give the person scholarship because they are interested in your crafts, your ability to be innovative and be creative, than sitting in a classroom for you to be taught by a teacher to say 1 + 1 is 1, 2 + 2 is what? Okay. Now, how do they also? So that is the essentialist. So here the teacher's role is just to encourage, facilitate learners' thinking, so, and not imposing on them. Any question on the two before we add up? Any question on the two philosophies or any contribution?
Doctor, my question has to do with the discipline aspects.
Please, what do you mean by the discipline aspect? The discipline is was talking about the subject too. Discipline as a subject.
Okay.
So can we continue?
Okay.
Can we continue?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Please, so can we say that the existentialists, they place more emphasis on discovery learning?
Discovery, yes.
Okay, Doc.
Now we move on to the pragmatism, which some also refer to them as experimentalism. Now, the word pragmatism is a Greek word, which when you translate in English, it means to do, to make, or to accomplish. So, the pragmatist philosophy of education, they are the school of thought that believe that true knowledge, truth, and knowledge is what you have personally experienced. And what you have been able to maneuver, navigate through. And they believe that this experience you have gone through, the ideas must be translated into what? Action. That's why I said the word pragmatism means to do, to make, to accomplish. So action. So the pragmatists believe in how you would translate the ideas, the experiences into practical what? Actions and consequences. That's why I say they believe in how to translate your ideas into action, and they define truth and knowledge in terms of what? Experience and their practical consequences. So the experiences you have gone through, So the experiences you have acquired, your knowledge, your thoughts, and your ideas as a learner, you should be able to translate them into actions. So the value of your knowledge, of your ideas, lies in your ability to make sure that you actualize these into practical settings. That's why they always say that as a pragmatist philosopher, we believe in the experience and not only sticking to one way, but we also believe that the world is changing, things are constantly. And as the learner interacts with his environment, which is dynamic in nature, they also are able to construct their knowledge among others. So that's the pragmatism for you. Now let's see. Okay. How do the pragmatists view their view of the curriculum? So depending on, based on their orientation, the pragmatists strongly advocate for what we call experiential curriculum. That is experience what curriculum. They stress the experience curriculum. A minute. So they advocate for experiential curriculum, and they believe that curriculum should focus on the interests, that is on the interest of the learner. It should be learner-centered. So those who are into those activity-based, learner-centered curriculum like experiential, even some to a point negotiated, are all classes that pragmatists advocate for. So the curriculum should address the needs of the learner. And yeah, don't forget that we are not talking about curriculum as a document, but we are talking about curriculum as an experiences learners go through to be able to acquire certain knowledge and understanding. Now, the curriculum emphasizes subjects like physical training, where the learner is given opportunity to explore hygiene among others. And they also believe in contextuality. So they also believe that true knowledge is what you have socially constructed, taking into context your situation different from another word situation. Unlike the perennialism, which believe that human nature is the same everywhere, and so they have one common curriculum for everybody, irrespective of where you are. The pragmatists don't do it that way. The pragmatists take your context into consideration whenever learning is concerned. Okay, Edisa, your hand is up.
Yes, sir. So please, I would want you to track the differences between the pragmatism and the as essentialism. It seems all is of equal characteristics.
Thank you. One of the things I would like you to pay attention is that the various philosophies that we are discussing, some of them have some characteristics that are common. For example, when we get to essentialism philosophy of education, you will see that there is a similarities with that one with perennialism. Just that you have one or two variations in there. In fact, some of them even emanated from some of the philosophies. For example, the perennialism emanated from the realism. When it comes to existentialists and that of the pragmatists, one of the significant difference has to do with the level of the teacher's involvement. In the pragmatists, there is some guided experience that are provided. But in the existentialists, there's that total freedom to the learner to make his own choices and live by his own consequence. And what the teacher has to do is to be frank, open up to the learners, and let them do their own exploration. Yes, in pragmatics, the learners are also given the opportunity to explore, to construct their own knowledge. But there is the level of guidance by the teacher serve as a facilitator in this context. Another one too is that in the pragmatists, in as much as they believe in the child learner's views, they also advocate for certain contextualities. The society you come from, and certain things that prevail there which can contribute to your formation or development. So, though the pragmatist stresses on experience, the teacher has a role to play in ensuring that the experiences you engage or go through is commensurate with the societal needs and the needs of the learners. That's why if you check, say the curriculum emphasizes subjects like physical training, social studies, mathematics, science, hygiene, among others. You see, social studies are things that was on the culture of the society that you find yourself. If you remember when we were doing educational psychology, there was this psychologist called Levi Vygotsky, who is a Russian philosopher, who talked about the social constructivism theory of learning, where he said that the environment the learner finds himself, the community or the society you find yourself, vis-a-vis the learners you interact with, goes a long way to influence how you make meaning or your thinking or your shaping of life. For example, we live in a country where when a guy dyes the hair and he wears an earring and with some jeans, we see that this is a rascal, this is a bad boy. But in other jurisdictions, such a style is seen as a fashion and they applaud you. Likewise, ladies, it's because of the culture and environment that we find ourselves. So these are some of the things that make some difference between the two, but they all share a number of similarities when it comes to characteristics.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other question or contribution? Okay. If there are no further, let's make progress by looking at the pragmatist view of the learner. Okay. So, according to the pragmatists, the learner must be seen as a whole organism who constantly interacts with the environment. The learner must be seen as a whole organism who constantly interacts with the environment that is dynamic in nature. That means that is it a new hand or old hand, Ibrahim Osman?
Sir, thank you for the opportunity. With regards to the slide,
Okay.
Some of us are not having with this content. I'm talking about the pragmatist view of learners. I'm not. I don't see it here. That is why I just wanted to prompt you whether you've given it out or it has not yet been given it to some of us.
So, but we are now doing it. So I only give it out when I'm done handling it. But don't you have the material?
No, please.
Oh, okay. So when I finish, I'll let you have it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Because that one, there's a detailed information in there. Okay. So when we say a whole organism, that means that as the learner is constantly interacting with the environment, which we know that is dynamic in nature, they do not only develop their cognitive, but their affective and psychomotor. There's that total development of the learner when they are exposed to such field experience. Look at the first picture, where learners are on the field, trying their skill, their crafts, their knowledge, experience on the field. What they acquire brings a lot of holistic development in terms of when it comes to cognitive. They're able to understand and appreciate the knowledge of what they are doing. In terms of affective side, they value the environment. They appreciate the landscape they live on and how they have to develop positive attitude towards the environment. And even if this group activity, how they're able to tolerate each other's contribution. Leadership skills, these are things that are effective, things that are developed. Then the ability of engaging that field work, the skill sets are also developed in there. Now, the learner are seen as a biological, psychological, and social being who brings to the school values and experiences that constitute their personality and makes them unique from others. They also appreciate that the learner doesn't come to school with an empty mind. Very important. They do not believe that the learner is a tabula rasa. They believe that the learner comes to school with something in mind. And that is why it is important as a teacher, you always start from what they have and develop upon it. Okay. So this means that education should address these learning needs that they have. And here, like we said, the teacher is a facilitator or a guide. The responsibility of the teacher is just to arrange the experiences and those guidelines, the ill-structured problem which students need to do their own exploration. So a typical example of methods that can be used here is a project-based, problem-based, fieldwork, cooperative learning. These are some of the methods that enable learners through experiences to construct their knowledge and understanding. Okay. Then we have the progressivism. The progressivism philosophy of education emanated from that of the pragmatists. So you could see that some of their characteristics align with that of the pragmatists. Now, the progressivists suggest that ideas should be tested by active experimentation. Hence, they suggest that learning is effectively promoted when learners interact with others through the use of what? Questioning. Hence, learning becomes learner-centered and also experience-centered. So, whilst the pragmatists are of the view that it prepares learners to solve real-world problems and promote social efficiency and adaptability, in terms of the progressivists, learners, through the use of questioning, they are also able to get whatever they want to learn from their facilitators. So they believe that the aim of education is to promote democratic and social living. Democratic and social living. Now, they believe that education should focus on the whole learner rather than on the contents or subjects or the teacher. And they build a curriculum around the experiences, interests, and abilities of learners. So you see that most of their arguments are aligned to that of the pragmatists. The only difference is that they believe that curriculum should be interdisciplinary, integrative, and interactive. Interdisciplinary means that a blend of one or two subjects, or integrative, a number of subjects being fused or mixed together. And that is a point of departure from that of the pragmatists. Because the pragmatists will not advocate for a curriculum, but rather will advocate for a child given opportunity to explore, to construct his own knowledge, the challenges he encounters, how he is able to maneuver through and get the thing done, is the knowledge that they advocated for. But the progressivists believe that the curriculum should be interdisciplinary, integrative, and interactive. And learners are required to integrate several subjects in their studies. Several subjects. So these are a few pointers that makes the progressivists quite different from the pragmatists. How do they view the learner and the teacher? They believe that the learner is a problem solver and thinker. It's a problem solver and thinker. The learner makes meaning through his or her own individual experiences. And the learner can learn by doing, that is through experience. So like activity-based and all those kind of problem-based and are all things that encourages learning by doing. The learners should determine their own individual curriculum, and teachers should guide and help them. Effective teachers should promote experience so that learners can learn by doing. Teachers must promote active learning by introducing new scientific, technological, and social development. And teachers should plan lessons that rouse curiosity and also that pushes learners towards a greater height or a higher order of knowledge of thinking and knowledge construction. So these are the views of the progressivists so far as curriculum, the learner, and the teacher is concerned. The last but not the least we want to talk is the essentialism philosophy of education. But before that, if you have any question, you can bring it out for us to discuss. Okay. Then let's add this. Then after, if we have some questions, we can discuss. So the word is essentialism. It's from the word essential, which means the basics, the fundamentals, the main things. So here, what the essentialism people are arguing is that the school should include a common body of knowledge that all learners should know, irrespective of where you are coming from. You must know. So all the core subjects that we have been doing in our basic, senior high, and even at the university level is from this philosophy. So we're in the primary, the basic level, we're doing environmental studies. We came to citizenship education. Now we are talking about what our people who have junior high school, we call it social studies, senior high school, social studies, in the university, we call it African studies. And some core subjects that we do, it is from these philosophers because they believe that there are certain common body of knowledge all learners must go through, must do. So in the university, irrespective of the program you are doing, whether medicine or whatever, you do communication skills, information literacy, information technology. You'll be doing basic university-wide courses, African studies, as a typical example of the core subject. So the essentialism people believe that education should aim at equipping the learner with a common core or the basics of information and skills like cultural heritage that are needed to promote citizenship. So essentialism people argue that the school should transmit traditional moral values, and the school should also provide the intellectual knowledge that learners need to become moral citizens. And that curriculum can change slowly. It can change slowly, but not radically, not fast. And also for a person to be educated, according to the essentialist people, he or she must know 5 essential disciplines. And these 5 essential disciplines include command of the mother tongue and systematic study of grammar, literature, and writing. Then we have mathematics, natural science, history, and modern foreign language. So where you have a country who says that core subjects are basis for determining whether you can proceed to the next level and others, where we have math as a core, English, science, then social studies. So you should know where it's coming from. It's from the essentialism philosophy. So they promote the development of the essential skills of the 3 R's. That is reading, writing, and arithmetic. And non-academic subjects such as vocational education, physical education, art and music should be given low priority in the school according to the essentialists. Now, how do they view the learner or the teacher? According to the essentialism philosophy, they are of the view that learners are to be taught to be culturally literate and to know about people, events, ideas, and institutions that have shaped them. That means that they believe that learners in their own sense cannot think for themselves. That's why they say in the text, I said, learners are too immature to decide what they need to learn. And so the school should decide for them. So obviously, they see that the learner is too immature, is not to decide what they need to learn. And so the school should decide for them. And that is why they believe that learners are to be taught to be culturally literate and to know about people, events, ideas, and institutions that have shaped the society, what we call the forebearers. And learners must learn to respect authority both in school and in society. They also believe that teachers should instill traditional virtues such as hard work, respect for authority, discipline, fidelity to duty, consideration for others, and practicality. They also believe that the teacher is the sole authority in his or her area of specialization. So these are the views of the essentialism so far as the learner and the teacher is concerned. Any question up to this point? Any question? And let me say that the philosophies have many. At your postgraduate level, you do a lot of them. You will be looking at the idealism, the realism, the reconstructionists, and a number of them that will be added. But at this level, we just, the essence of this unit is just to expose you to some of the philosophies and their views so far as curriculum, the learner and the teacher is concerned. At the master's level, it will be expanded in adding other areas to it. So you may come across other philosophies like the reconstructionist philosophy of education, the idealist, the idealism, the realism, the rationalism, the experimentalism, and all those schools of thought, which we have not discussed here. They are all part, but that one is at the postgraduate level that we do extensive work in that regard. So any question on the philosophies before we move on to the next unit? Okay, so do I take your silence to mean that we can make progress?
No, so
Yes,
please,
sir.
with this,
So you can continue.
how would the possible questions be concerning this particular unit?
But how do you ask this question? Why do you ask this question? Now, this is a poisonous question that need a poisonous answer. How would the question be framed? The question will be framed in no way. The most important thing is to understand this. It can be objective questions. It can be an essay question. So it can come in any way. what you need to do is to understand it so that when you are asked, you can know what to write. If you have the material, go to the Unit 2 and see the review questions there. That's a typical example of what the question is there. Those who have the material, go to the review question. This unit, there's a review question there. And look at how questions are framed in this unit. Then when you go to the objective side, the review questions objective, go there. There are about 3 or 4 questions on this unit. That will let you know how questions are set in this area. I guess I've answered you.
Yes, sir.
But next time, don't ask poisonous question. Why? Okay. So let me stop this one and share the other unit. But whilst I'm doing that, if you also have any question, please don't hesitate to share. So I take your silence means that you are okay that we can make progress. Okay. Yeah, I've seen it. So the next unit we are looking at determinants of curriculum development. Determinants of curriculum development. Now, when we say determinant, another name that you can use to represent determinant is what? Yes, I would like to take your view. Another name for determinant is what? Things could, okay, according to Victor Scofi, what's the things to consider? Okay, thank you. Yes, any other? Any other?
What about factors?
Factors, that's correct. Factors. Yes. Tanga to say factors, that's correct. Yes. So when we talk of determinants of curriculum development, it's basically referring to factors or things or issues or drivers or indicators that influence a particular direction of a curriculum within a particular society, or else what will make a society decide to use, let's say, this type of curriculum or this kind of curriculum, or let's say to maybe what to make a society decide I'm using experiential curriculum, standard based, common core, subject based. There are a number of factors that influence the development of a particular curriculum. And that's what we want to discuss in this unit. Now, so one of the first factors we want to discuss has to do with what we call the philosophy, politics, and ideology. Philosophy, politics, and ideology. It's one of the factors or determinants of curriculum development. And as we all know that philosophy is the belief system of a society. And the belief system of the society influences their ideology, their political goals, and their philosophical goals. So if you have a society that believes in the perennialism philosophy of education, obviously that teacher will advocate, that society will go in for curriculum that is more of subject-based curriculum. If it is a society that believes in the pragmatist philosophy, obviously that society will advocate for learners to be going to what we call the experiential curriculum. Likewise, there's essentialist and also the essentialism, where they will be emphatic on moral values, transmission of moral values. So this core subject, society will be requiring that learners who should be delivered. So the philosophy of the society will go a long way to determine the type of curriculum the society will adapt. Also, when it comes to the politics side, their political goals. In fact, when you live in a country like Ghana, where our education system are in the hands of the politicians who decide where the education direction should go is where we all. There was a time in Ghana where a government came and it said that secondary education should be 4 years. And for that matter, the curriculum has to be changed or revised or adjust to meet the additional word here. Even though there was no new content were added, they just did core subject in first year. Then in second to the fourth year, you do the elective together with the core. And I believe you remember. Or you are Latter-day Saint.
So some of us are Latter-day Saints.
Some of you are Latter-day Saint.
Yes.
But we remember. That's around 20.
Kofo's era.
No.
It was Kofo's era.
Okay.
Then Atamils came and said, oh, it's not about the number of years, but it's about the quality of the tuition and our contact hours. So he reversed it back to 3 years. And that also affected the curriculum. We need to have to restructure it to reverse it back to the 3 years. So I remember there was a time where the 4-year batch, the last cohort, and the third year, there was another cohort who has to write WASI together within that same period. A time came, the previous government said that he wants to change the curriculum of Ghana. So through the help of our international donors and supporters, like MasterCard Foundation, Switzerland, UNESCO, UNICEF, USAID, and all other comfort and all some international bodies sponsored this curriculum. And because the government in power decided that he wants to bring those reforms. And that is what now we have standard base at the basic school and the common core at the junior high and also standard base at the senior high school. And that is the political goal aspect. The politics of the country can also at times determine the direction of the curriculum of that society. There was a time a government was in power who said that free SHS within the shortest possible time. Another government who wanted to be in power was also that free SHS now. So those who said free SHS within the shortest possible time started with the day students, and they wanted to gradually extend to the borders. But Akufo-Addo's administration said free SHS now, and when he came to power, he made sure that everybody, irrespective whether you are day or border, you have experience of the free SHS. So what we are trying to say is that the political aspect of the society, especially when it comes to the leadership of the country, also influence the direction of our curriculum and the nature and the type of curriculum. When the government wanted to do the reform, that's why he was able to do it. And now we are having a standard base, common core, and standard base at the senior high school, which did not used to be previously. I get in the picture. Then also when we talk of the issue of ideological ideas. Ideological. I am saying or citing all these examples because when you are also explaining a point, for me, I expect you to use examples to explain. Because if there is anything, it will come with, let's say, with an example. So I expect you to also be citing examples whenever you are explaining to me. Then in terms of the ideas, ideology, so the ideology of the society will also determine the direction where their curriculum will go. For example, we live in a country where some section of the country believe in the capitalists, and they are mostly aligned with the MPP. A section also believe in the Social Democrats, and they align with the NDC. Then Nkrumah who are also socialists, the CPP. So, because of the ideological orientation of these political leaders within our societies who are leading the country, it goes a long way. For example, the pragmatists, the capitalists who always want individuals to own properties. So they will churn out courses or programs, curriculum that will ensure that individuals grow up to own properties. But the social democrats want to take, the government should play a role or center stage to ensure that there is this government stepping to provide certain measures so that the vulnerable will not be disadvantaged. And likewise, Nkrumah, the socialist. And that's why during the Nkrumah's era, based on his ideology, look at there's so many things that he did in the name of the state for the country. He did not leave it in the hands of individuals to own them. But when MPP come to come, because they are capitalists, they will always intend to let individuals own the properties. No wonder in the previous regime, you see a number of states' assets being sold to individuals, including people who are ministers in the administration. So that is the issue about the philosophy, politics, and ideology. The next determinant has to do with what called psychological factors. Psychological factors. Now, when we say psychological factors deals with the issues that relate to the nature of human growth and development. Theories of teaching and learning, principles of teaching, among others. And psychological factors are very, very important because it is that level that we abreast ourselves with the targets or the level of learners that we are developing the curriculum for, and its related characteristics of those learners. In fact, and that's why we look at the various theories of growth and development. An example is the Jean Piaget's stages of growth and development, where he said that from birth, where he talks about the sensory motor stage, that's from birth to the 12 months, where he said at that time the learners, the child's mind has not developed, his memory has not developed, hence he cannot engage in complex activities and hypothetical analysis, among others, through to the pre-operational, the formal, to the concrete stages. Each of them has its own age range and the characteristics they possess. So the psychological factors addressing ourselves to all these things and theories of learning, be the behaviorist school of thought, who believe that the child is a neutral organism. So what the kind of responses you want the child to exhibit is dependent on the stimuli you provide. So all these things influence the content of a curriculum and the type and kind of curriculum that is designed for a particular society. That is why in the curriculum development panel or committee, we have an educational psychologist who is a member of the committee. And his role is to draw the attention of the other team members who are subject specialists, among others, who are not psychologists, to the point that, hey, we are developing this curriculum for class 3. Class 3, this is their average age, and these are their characteristics, this is how they learn, this is how they do things. So this task we are demanding of class 3 students to do in this curriculum, it will not be easy for them, to be difficult, it will not be feasible, it will be beyond them, or it will be less than. So the essence of the psychological factors is to ensure that we develop a curriculum that will be reflective of the learner's level of development, level of maturity, level of aspiration, and the level of growth altogether. Are you following?
We are following, sir. Thank you.
So that's the psychological factor. Because see,
Okay.
the truth of the matter is that As for the subject specialist, oh no, he wants to provide a lot of courses for you to do so that you write books and get money. So the educational psychologist is the one who provide the guidance. Hey, class 3, this is their average. You see, that's why I have a problem. Recently, I met some kids, and one of them is in class 2 or class 3. And they said that they have been told to go and do projects. And so they are in the cafe doing projects. And I asked myself, class 2 or class 3, what kind of project will send them to cafe? And they are saying the standard way, they say students must do things, they must do projects and all those kind of things. What is that? What kind of project? What better project do you expect class 2? In fact, these people, they go to cafe. If care is not taken, they end up doing something different without even focusing on what you want them to do. Because you see, at that level, with all due respect, it is not appropriate to expose learners to that kind of channel. Yes, I'm talking about UCC Basic School kids. I met them behind Ogaho. There's a cafe there. There's a cafe before the Amos Photos. Even secondary school children who have been given tablets. Recently, the minister was complaining that they are using it to watch porno. Is that not so?
It's true, sir.
And this class 2 or class 3, what kind of project? Eh? Your project I go to Muhammad if you show an answer. I'm going to call Trump group. Okay, the next factor we want to look at is the social culture and other factors in society. Social culture and other factors. Now, when we talk of social cultural factor, the most important social cultural factor when it comes to education or training of citizens of any country is the language of that particular country. Is the language of that particular country. And it's quite unfortunate that it is only in Ghana that we want to develop, but we have decided to adopt the language of our colonial masters. We don't want to even decolonize ourselves in our language. Listen, the developed countries, we talk about them. The developed countries, we talk about them. None of these developed countries that we talk about them, that we want to be like them, train their citizens with a foreign language. When you go to US, you will never see US teaching kids with their Ghanaian language because their native language is English. When you go to France, in fact, even if you are not a French person, you must learn before you can transact in France or seek certain public goods. In fact, it was last year or two that now France decided to adopt English as their second language. I have a relative there whose children cannot even speak English than to speak even Fanti. Meanwhile, the parents are Ghanaian bona fides. The father is a Fanti, the mother is from a Bri. But their 3 kids cannot even speak the English than to even speak their own parents' dialect. So such children, if you put Ghana and you put France, tell me, where would they have their sense of belonging? Where? If you put Ghana and put France, where would these kids have their sense of belonging? It's France. Thank you, Kofi. It's France. You see, one thing you must know is that, you see, language has a certain force or spirit that binds people together. That's why when you go somewhere and you meet somebody talking, and per the accent or the language the person speaks, you just okay, the way I can say or fantinya. Then you approach, are you a fanti? The moment you say yes, oh okay, which part of fanti? Oh, this side. Oh, I'm also from this side. Oh, okay. Oh, then you are my brother. Oh, Charlie, but what are you doing here? Oh, I came to buy some things. Have you gotten some? Oh no, I'm just waiting. Someone, oh, let me help you out for the sake of the language, not because the person is your biological sibling, but the fact that your accent or your language has intrigued the person to see that you are my brother. We are from the same area, so let me offer you the help. Haven't you heard of that or experienced that before? It's the same thing, that the language that you use to teach your people end up draw them to their origin of it. Now, every child who is schooling, when you ask, oh, when I finish, I want to feather outside. I want to feather outside. I want to feather outside. None of them want to say that they want to stay in Ghana and continue. And at times we think because it's always because the conditions here are not good. At times, intrinsically or implicitly, these are the things that bind people will. And when you ask her, they said, oh, as for Ghana, Ghanaian languages are too much. We can't use it as a medium of exchange because there are a lot of them. We are joking. China has a lot of multilingual languages than Ghana. China has a lot of local dialect language than Ghana, but they use it to teach their own people. Even Rwanda, you will never go and see Rwanda using English to teach their people. Go to Germany, you will never see that. Even China, when you go to China, you are going to do postgraduate program. You are obliged to do Chinese language and pass before you can progress. That's why Nelson Mandela once said, if you teach a child in a language he understands, it sticks in the head. If you teach a child in his own language, it sticks to the heart. And there's this man who wrote this song. I've forgotten the name. Those of you who are good at singing, you can tell me the name of the person. Also, it goes this way. Odo papa no ye dinwaku memu. Odo papa no ye dinwaku memu. Mi do fia bro, mi dia bro, befi mano. Odo papa no ye dinwaku memu. Odo papa no ye dinwaku memu. Mi do fia bro, mi dia bro, befi mano. Trying to tell you, say, since when you teach a child in his own language and it sticks to the heart, and liken it to the songwriter who says that Odo papa ni yedin wa kumom ti chese se chire abofranas wonankasa ne kase mu no tona kumoma otide Odo papa oye zindo obefina kumom ato fom. Oye zindo obefina kumom ato fom. That is what it means. So we have ended up skewing our children to English to the extent that now when a child is not able to speak English well, he's not able to write because of the English, then we say wabong. But kids are growing up, and today when they speak good English 1 and 2, say, hey, my child is doing well. He knows how to speak good English and those things. And now our children are becoming strangers in their hometowns. They go to their parents' hometown, they see themselves as strangers because they cannot even speak their own parent dialect. So they don't see themselves belonging to that area. And that is the bad thing we are doing to our kids. You will never see this in any of the developed countries, including Singapore and even Rwanda, who is an African country. So it's about time that we have an orientation with how we are training our kids, our children. Apart from the language matter, and other social culture, other factors in the society include what we call the issue of the racial or minority rights. It's still under social culture. You see, whenever we are developing a curriculum, we don't only think about Ghanaians alone. You see, there are some people who are not Ghanaians who also come to Ghana to patronize our education system. What we call them international students. The same way Ghanaians also travel outside to go and pursue education over there. So such people, we call them the minority right or racial. So anytime we are planning for them, because of their cultural backgrounds and differences, we also design the curriculum in such a way that they will have a place in the program. That's why normally, if we are quoting admissions, fee, and those things in cities for Ghanaians, those international students, we quote in dollars for them. And now we are talking about the issue of multiculturalism, global citizenship. These are all issues that previously were not paying attention, but now in development of that's why the current standard bill, there's issue of multiculturalism in there, and mixed ability groupings and global citizens issues are all now in the curriculum, trying to help us become a global citizens or have global perspective of how things are. So themes such as multiculturalism, minority rights, whether there should be the need for multicultural education for a particular level of our schooling. At times, we could even have white people who come for exchange program. When they come for the exchange program, they take courses here and we grade them and forward it back to the university they came from. And I remember when I was on my first degree program, there was some whites who came from Netherlands, Merit Pata and co. So they joined us, I think in 2012 for some course. Then when we were about to end the course for exams, you know, as part of their program, they went out for excursion and all those kind of things. Now, when the time was due for the exams, as usual, Ghanaians, we have gone to be searched and we are in the room. We have been given answer booklets and we are writing our index numbers and details. These whites were not coming, only for us to see them coming from the other end with their books as if they are going to law court to make case. They got to the entrance and the invigilator said, no, put your books away and come and sit in to write. And they told the invigilator that they are coming to write the exams with a book. And they said, no, yeah, you cannot do that. They didn't understand until the lecturer came and the lecturer explained things to them that here in Ghana, you cannot go into the exams room with your books. You have to put the books away and go and write. The moment the lecture ended, the lead of the white people opened their mouth and say, what a bullshit. Telling the lecturer, what a bullshit. Do you think I'm a computer? Telling the lecturer that, do you think it's a computer to all the things they have learned within the semester that they should come and sit and barbarize them? They are not a computer. Damn shit. And they left. They didn't write the exams. They didn't. They left. As I'm talking to you, Merit Pata is a PhD holder in the university in Netherlands. Because in their system, that is not how they write their exams. They are allowed to go in with every material they need to write the exams. But in our context, it's not like that. So whenever it comes to this racial and minority, these are things that we take into consideration to avoid conflicting issues whenever we have foreign students and all those kind of things, so far as the curriculum is concerned. Now, we also talk about the level of economic development in a society tends to influence They are subject matter component of the curriculum. Yeah, what we mean is that if a country focuses their economy on a special training, it goes a long way to influence the people that they also build. For example, you see, we said a highly urbanized society will have a curriculum whose focus will be on issues bordering what? Urbanization. And let me give you a classical example. You realize that Germany has specialized and their economy is driven with technical skills to the extent that any country who wants to go in that line, the best country you have to go is Germany. That's why when we wanted to convert our polytechnics into technical universities, we have to send a team to Germany. They also have to come down to help us to convert our polytechnics into technical universities because they have specialized and lead in that area. And when they do that, we pay them and it goes to the economy. In terms of production, it's China. You cannot bypass China. But they have the cheap labor and they have the huge production hub. When it comes to doctors and training of doctors, Cuba. A time came in Ghana where bringing Cuban doctors to take care of our people. You remember during the COVID time when Italy had done all they could and threw their hands in despair, it took Cuban doctors a minute. So it took Cuban doctors to go to Italy to help them subside their situation, where they paid. Now, Ghana, what is driving our economy? You hear that we say, as for Ghana, we are an agrarian economy. An agrarian economy. Is that not so? Is that not what we are told, that we are an agrarian economy? Oh,
Yes,
I
sir.
need your,
Yes, sir.
and you ask yourself, how many schools are even doing agric these days? How many, even now, universities, people don't want to do agric. So now they have modified agric business, agric extension, agric did that. So it looks as if that as a country, we do not even know our focal point of what is really driving. And especially universities who have been specially designed for a specific purpose have all diverted their focus. Science and technology is now doing business, humanities, and all those kind of things. To the extent that now they're even looking at training college. teachers. No, they don't even train teachers in their university. So it looks as if as a country, we do not know our priorities, and any wind is blowing us to any. So you hear that always the service sector is leading. And this service sector too is predominantly foreigners. Talk of the telcos, none of them are Ghanaian owned. Talk of the banks, majority of them are foreign nationals. Few Ghanaian banks exist. So these are issues that becomes a very, very important for our discussion. Now, the next factor has to do with financial priorities and material resources. One of the things you must take note is that curriculum development is very expensive. I will not lie to you. That if you do not have money and the resources, it will be difficult for you to design. Because you see, in first place, you are bringing a team of experts, specialists, people who have their own business together to sit and design. You must pay them some allowances. You must provide logistics. You must provide office, stationaries. They must move. They must do tryout. They must do field trial. They must do a write-up at every stage and do formative, which is money intensive. So without financial priorities, if the government do not prioritize resources for that, obviously the development will be affected. And where the resources are made available, that is why the previous government, when he determined, he was able to get resources from our donors to change the curriculum from the subject-based to the standard-based as we are currently having the Common Core. And with this, we have support from MasterCard Foundation, Switzerland, UNICEF, UNESCO, and all these funding donors. So without resources, it will be difficult for any curriculum development to take place. Well, like I said, we need to purchase educational facilities, teaching learning resources, textbooks, teachers' manual, syllables, pickups, stationaries, offices. There should be movement, fueling. The experts must be given allowances, among others. So these are all things that are quite expensive, that if resources are not available, it will impede the development of the curriculum and vice versa. The next factor I want to talk is the knowledge factor. And when we talk of knowledge factor, this entails the types of subject matter that should be taught to students in order to achieve the aims, goals, and objectives of the society. So the various subjects the society wants learners to be taught reflect the kind of knowledge they want their learners to acquire. So if you have a society that believes that curriculum should transmit moral values and not radically change, but gradually, slowly, obviously, you know the kind of knowledge the society wants. And under this knowledge, there are a number of theories that underpin knowledge factor. We have one that's the pragmatic theory, which says that we know only what we experience, as we have discussed in their line of thought. They only know what they experience. Then we have what we call the coherence theory, which says that a statement is true if it is in agreement with other judgment that has been proven to be true. So what it means is that when you make a statement, for example, waterlogged areas are liable to flooding, that's a statement. This statement can only be true if you apply it in another jurisdiction and it still becomes the same. If you apply it in another context and it is still proving that waterlogged areas is liable to flooding, then we can say that it is a coherent theory. So always coherent theory and knowledge theory, which stipulates that statement is true if it's in conformity with other judgments of that same statement, which has been validated, verified, and proven to be true. And the difference between the coherent theory and that of the corresponding theory, in the corresponding theory, that statement has not been proven to be true. It has not been verified. It has not been validated, but it is only in agreement within the context in which you are describing what you are saying. So if you are saying that you are in Elmina and you are saying waterlogged areas in Elmina is liable to flooding, it could be a statement of facts and truths depending on the context that you are describing, which is the judgment you are making that claims to describe within the context of Elmina. If you take it in another context like Cape Coast and it's not the case, then that is corresponding. It's corresponding. Your statement of fact is corresponding with your context that you are describing, but it may not be applicable in another context. If it is applicable in other contexts and it is proven to be true, another context, it is proven that it becomes coherence theory. Are you getting the difference?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we have what you call the empirical theory. That is, knowledge can only be obtained through personal experience. Through personal experience, and especially with the use of what? The five senses to observe and make decisions. So the five senses, we are talking about your eye, nose, mouth, ears, hands for touching, among others. Then we have rational theory, that knowledge can only be derived through rational reasoning without the help of observation. Then intuitive, that is something that dawns on you, sudden dawn. So sudden awareness of something that dawns on a person in search of knowledge or solution to a problem. And we have what we call revelational theory. And this reveals knowledge coming from supernatural being or deity like God, Allah, or whatever deity you believe in. So these are all examples of knowledge theories that you can reflect on. The next determinant we want to touch on is the teacher or instructor characteristics. Now, the teacher or the instructor is a critical stakeholder when it comes to curriculum development and implementation, especially during the implementation, because he is responsible for interpreting what you have developed that he was not part. Hence, when teachers have a thorough appreciation and understanding of the new program and its dictates, obviously the implementation will go on well, and vice versa. So in developing the curriculum, teacher who is a key stakeholder in the design and implementation of the curriculum, some of the basic questions you must ask yourself: this program we are developing, do we have the teachers to implement it for us? If we do they have the academic qualification to teach the subject? Do they have the professional qualification? Do the teachers have thorough understanding and appreciation of the new curriculum? Previous curriculum, there was nothing like content standards. Now the new one, there's something called content standard. There's something called as pedagogical exemplar. There's something called learning indicators, at the same time learning outcomes. Does the teacher have a thorough understanding and appreciation of all these things so that he can interpret it the way that is intended or otherwise. What are the interests of the teacher? Because see, when the interest of the teacher is not taken care of, the implementation will suffer. What are the abilities, the aptitudes, the attitude and disposition of the teacher, which will also go a long way to affect the curriculum implementation. So we are saying that the background characteristics of the teacher, such as the academic, professional qualification, their interests, attitude, dispositions, aptitude, count very much when it comes to curriculum implementation. Hence, these things are very critical things that when you joke with it, your curriculum development will fall flat. Then we have students' background, which is also very important. The truth of the matter is that all the development of curriculum, whatever you are doing, the final consumer is the learner. And since they are the recipient of the curriculum, it is imperative and proper to know the nature of the learners you are developing for. The nature we are talking about, their characteristics in terms of their age, their level of understanding, their level of their learning styles, their needs, their interests, their maturity level. In fact, even their social-cultural background and their economic status. Because if you are developing a curriculum and a community is such that they even do the only medium of exchange is barter trade as a money to get what they want. And you develop a curriculum that warrant them that they should be buying things, purchasing, and all those things. Such students will not even go to the school in first place because they don't have money to do those things. So students and people's background, their background counts a lot when the curriculum is being designed and implemented. Because if you do not take into consideration their age, their level of understanding, their maturity level, and how their learning styles, their needs and interests, and you develop any curriculum and come and dump on them, it may be beyond their ability and they may give up. And when it is also below them, they may fool around. So student background is very critical. Here, their background characteristics that you must take note is look at their age, their maturity level, their level of understanding or assimilation. And also you must look at their socio-cultural background and economic status. You must also pay attention to what are their needs, what their interests, what triggers them to learn and otherwise. Very, very important. Then we have development on the international arena as another determinant. And here we are saying that there are a number of demographic and socioeconomic changes taking place in America, in Europe and Asia, which is also having a positive, both positive and negative effects on African societies. And some of these things spread through the mass media or the internet and other forms of dissemination of information. And many communities get to know about these various developments in other parts, and that influence our curve. A classical example of this is the issue of LGBTQ, which foreign countries are now teaching their kids. And I'm told that there are some international schools even here who are even teaching their learners comprehensive sexuality education. When you go outside, they are taught and they are made to make their own choices. If you feel like if you're a lady and you feel like you feel like a guy, you can go for transgender or bisexual. They are teaching people. And that's why at a point in time, if you remember when they were doing the standard base, Swiss brought us $3 million to incorporate some of these things. And it took Ghanaians to rise up to say that this is affront to our culture. We do not abhor. And so the comprehensive sexuality education that they included in the standard base, the society rose up and it was taken out of that. And that time, I think Napo was the Machopoku Pempe was the Minister of Education. And I'm sure you are aware of that. So you see, all these things that are happening around the globe, issues of the horseshoe sitting arrangement, It was something that we were not used to it. It took the Netherlands to come to Ghana to impose that on us. This issue of don't cane a child. They used to cane us in schools. For these development in other jurisdictions, they brought this concept that when you cane a child, you put him in a psychological trauma and all those kind of things. So then we shouldn't cane the child. We shouldn't impose any corporal punishment and all those kind of things. And now look at our schools with a high rate of indiscipline. And that's the problem we are being faced with. Well, I don't understand why you say that this is wholesale promotion from SHS1 to SHS. Don't fail anybody. Whether the person comes to school, whether he does or he doesn't, that we should wholesale promotion. Which school does that? It doesn't make any sense. Yes, if the free SHS is 3 years, and if the person doesn't do any repeat, let the person pay. You have already given the free SHS. The 4th year, let the person pay. But to say because of free SHS, there should be wholesale, nobody should be repeated. And because of that, they don't come to school and they don't respect teachers. Because whether they come, whether they take it or not, they are going to be promoted. It doesn't serve a good signal. And that's why the tablet that was given to them, we couldn't even restrict them where they can go. We just give them tablet to learn materials on it. And they are now, we are being told by the current Minister of Education that the kids are using the laptop to watch, the tablet to watch porno. The next one we want to touch on is the changes in educational thinking. Now, this changes in educational thinking results from the emphasis from other stakeholders or other countries on the use of child-centered education, competency-based education, which are now becoming the focus of our curriculum development. Now, when you are developing any curriculum for approval by GTEC, you must indicate in your curriculum the national relevance of that curriculum by reflecting it to the Sustainable Development Goals, which the Sustainable Development Goals are programs and policies by UNESCO. So that's why now we are moving to standard-based common core, which under it are a lot of core competencies that learners must acquire with skills to become a global citizens. So we have people like UN and its agency have made moves to achieve the education for all concept and education component of the Sustainable Development Goals, which I've mentioned, that Sustainable Development Goal 4. So this has prompted many nations to think of increased access to education for all sectors of the population, women, the handicapped, school dropouts, among others. So the changes in educational thinking by these stakeholders and scholars has also contributed to the change or the direction that Ghanaian curriculum have taken recently. So these are the number of factors that influence the development of a curriculum, be it a geography curriculum or any other field. And that is that for the determinant. Any question up to this point? Okay.
No, Doc.
Okay, so this is what we want to do. I think that we can give ourselves maybe some 5 to 10 minutes break. Then we can continue with the next unit.
Okay,
Okay,
sir.
sir.
Yes. So maybe it's now 1:34. So by 1:48, we'll come back for the next unit, which will be the unit 4. There's types of curricular and their education applications. Okay.
Please, is Crispin here? Crispin.
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Uh, please,
Hello, Steven.
cons- I have received your voice note.
Oh, okay, okay,
Those who want their books individually should WhatsApp me, or they should call me from your end.
okay.
And they should communicate so that we know what to do. They can't just make decision without communicating to us.
Guess you are all back. Now we can continue. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
We are back.
Okay. Okay. Let me share the screen so that we make progress. Welcome back from the break. Okay, we are looking at types of curricula and their implications for teaching and learning. Types of curricula and their implication for teaching and learning. So we looked at the concepts with philosophical, then the determinants. Now I want to look at types of curricula and their educational implications. And let me be quick to say that the types that we are going to discuss, they are not exhaustive. In fact, there are a number of the types out there that we can't finish talking about all of them. We will need a whole block to talk about them. But the ones that are very at the list at this level can be discussed are the ones we want to discuss. Subsequently, I'm sure at the master's level, we'll be able to delve more into other areas as well. Now, when you pick one document, we call it curriculum. If it is one, we call it curriculum. But if there are many, they are curricula. So take note of that. When to use curriculum and curricula. If it is one, we call it curriculum. If there are many, they are curricula. Okay, let's set the ball rolling. The first one we want to talk about is what we call official, formal, or planned or written curriculum. Now, anytime you say formal, official, planned, or written curriculum, there's a type of curriculum where all the learning activities, all the learning that must take place in the school are planned and written. Documents are issued for the school to see to its implementation. In fact, it's a program of study which is officially documented, sanctioned by the Ministry of Education in the context of Ghana for use by the schools. And all the planned learning are prescribed in this type of curriculum. That's why I say it is a study of the program which is officially documented, prescribed, and intended for classroom instruction. So all the learning activities, planned learning, and those things that are prescribed in a document form in the name of curriculum is what we term as formal, official, or plan or written curriculum. We are saying that to represent the publicly announced expectation the school or the training institutions has for its learners. And this includes the public statement of the goals and intent of the education in terms of the school's vision, mission, and the organogram of the school are all parts of these official calendars of the school, the time allocations, timetables for the school, the syllabus, and its related description of various content in the individual syllabus. The teacher's manual, the teaching learning resources are all examples of things that are prescribed in the official or formal curriculum. So official list of the recommended textbooks, content and the style of final and intermediate examinations, include official policies concerning school buildings, furniture, teaching and learning equipment or resources, the official syllabuses for the various schools that are all added, are all things that are part of the official curriculum. So the textbook, the teacher's manual, the syllabus, the teaching learning resources, the calendar, the timetables, and all these are all part of the official or the planned curriculum. Now the question is, what is the educational implications if everything that is to be done is prescribed? One of the educational implications is that if everything to be done is prescribed, it ensures smooth delivery of or smooth implementation of the curriculum by the teacher or the facilitator. You see? And take note that whenever we are talking about the educational implications, it can be a positive implication or a negative what? Implication. So whenever you are talking, you can have a blend of the two. So if everything that to be done is prescribed, it is easy for implementation so far as the teacher is concerned, especially where everything in terms of the content, the recommended textbook, the syllabus, the manual, everything has been prescribed as to how the teacher can go about it. And if everything has been prescribed, it also helps to ensure that the attainment of the objectives are aligned with what is stipulated in the various documents to ensure that whether there's a progress that is being made or otherwise. And these are information that you may not see it in a slide, but you can pin them down. But we can also, another implication is that there can be a situation where there is a mismatch between what the official curriculum may prescribe and also the prescribed methods of teaching and learning that can be utilized in that context. Now, the official can know that there are some topics that at times they prescribe certain activities, certain methods and techniques that can be used. Looking at the context of the school settings and where the community finds itself, the curriculum may suggest or prescribe certain activities that should be done or methods or techniques that should be used, but in reality, looking at the situation on the ground, they cannot be used. And that could be a disadvantage. Also, at times, there could be a mismatch between what is prescribed that learners must be assessed and the content of the format and the content of the external examination. Especially in our context where we have a different body called WAEC who assesses students of a program they have gone to, which was developed by a different body, which WAEC wasn't part when they were developing the curriculum. So at times there's a discrepancy between what the official curriculum will prescribe or wants to assess vis-a-vis what WAEC will also end up assessing students on. And these are some of the mismatch that may arise when it comes to the official curriculum. Remember that we even have detailed syllabus and outline syllabus, where the outline syllabus only focuses on the topics that WAEC outlined that they mostly assess students on. So like I said, the education implication, it can be both positive and negative. Another implication that the curriculum may suggest learning outcomes such as self-reliance and inquiry-based teaching and learning, whereas the official syllabus may contain an outline of content so rigid and overloaded as to render any inquiry-based teaching and learning impossible. Yes, you have described that this method is used problem-based or project-based. But the truth of the matter is that you cannot use problem-based or project-based within 1 hour or 2 hours. At times, it can even span a week or a month. Meanwhile, the timetable on the system, the syllabus is loaded, and the timetable has been structured to the extent that within an hour or two, another teacher is coming to teach. So the question is, what time will you have to take the student to the field for the problem-based? So at times, the overloaded nature of the syllabus or teacher's manual and the content vis-a-vis the timetable and the calendar of the school makes it so difficult for these things to be used. Another issue is that an official teacher's guide may recommend project work or locally based inquiry on specific topics, whereas the official timetable, like I've said, may render such activities impossible by dividing up the day into various lesson units, which I've already indicated. So these are some of the implications when you have the official curriculum, everything being prescribed, including the calendars, among others, vis-a-vis in reality what may prevail within the school. The next we want to talk about is informal or co-curricular. When we say informal or co-curricular, these are experiences that learners acquire in the school which are not part of the officially documented learnings that are sanctioned by the Ministry of Education to be done by the schools. So those experiences learners acquire which are not planned, which are not written, which are not prescribed in a document form is what we term as informal or co-curricular. That's why I said this refers to those non-academic and co-curricular activities as well as collateral learning that are usually undertaken by the school. An example of some of these may be sporting activities, clubs, social meetings, excursions, study trips, dining sections. You see, for example, when we're in secondary school, we're having denominational meeting like GAMSU, CASA, JIMSA, CASU. These are all denominational meetings, which is not part of the school's officially documented learning that we should go through. But we go through and acquire some experience in the school. Writers and Debaters Club, sporting activities. Yes, the sporting could be district-based as part of a district calendar, but it's not part of the officially documented learning that students must go through in their classroom setting. And we are saying that when these activities are perceived to be an addition to academic curricula of coursework, then we call them as extracurricular activities. So a typical example is when I teach a topic like the landform associated with marine erosion, like cave. And at the end of the day, after that lesson, I decided to take my student on a field trip or excursion to, let's say, Commander Cave, for them to have a real feel of what the cave that I've taught them in the classroom looks like. That excursion, to give a further understanding and sensory memory of the cave, becomes an extracurricular activity. Are you getting the picture?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So some of the education certification is that it provides opportunity for students to acquire and use social and academic skills in many different contexts. So these social skills are derived from the social gatherings like the denominational meetings where students appoint themselves as executives and they learn these leadership skills, team work, leadership and followership, and our organizational skills. So these are social skills. Writers and debaters club, the sport, these are things that they learn in conjunction with the academic one, which they can apply these skills in other fields. Students who take active part in informal curriculum tends to have higher self-concept or images than those who do not. You see, like sporting activities and other these things also unearth other potential of learners. So, for example, there are people who may not be academically strong, but they may be in terms of the skill set and other talents that they can unearth. You see, a classical example is this movie I watched, which I always recommend that if you're a teacher, you must watch that movie. Like Stars on Earth, a show where the guy was not academically strong, but he has a talent which, if it was harnessed, when it was harnessed well, the guy became the best in the whole school. So there are people too, when it comes to other like self holistically. You see. Now we could also look at the values, attitude, and appreciation and sensitivities acquired through such learning continue to endure long after students have left school. Yes, some of us were able to handle certain positions in our workplaces and church because of some of the skills we learned from GAMSU in the secondary school days and the university days. So these values, attitude, and appreciation, and that team's work spirit, tolerance, and those things that we learn from these activities from the school also help us to utilize it even when we have left school. And we are saying that if the formal correlates with the informal, it makes the student to realize the learning outcomes of the curriculum and it enhances their learning greatly. That means that if you teach the theory of cave and you take them to excursion to observe the cave, blending the two, it makes the learning become more interesting and more encouraging in that regard. So that's what we are trying to talk about here. Now we are talking about recommended or ideological curriculum. When we say recommended or ideological curriculum, this is a type of curriculum which stakeholders believe that it is expedient for learners to have. So it is a curriculum that stresses what ought to be. That is the skills, the concepts, or knowledge that ought to be emphasized for learners to develop. And these are mostly based on the perception and the value system of the society that the learners come from. So at times, society believes that there are certain courses that irrespective of your level, you must do it. And that one becomes a recommended. For example, society has been complaining so much about people completing school and they are not getting jobs to do. Because society believes that once you go through tertiary institution, you should be able to get work to do and become self-reliant and even help in some way to your parents. But people are going to school and now they are becoming graduate unemployed. So society begins to question the essence of tertiary education or university education. Hence, they recommend that there should be some practical skills. And that's why in the University of Cape Coast, there's this course what we call entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is a recommended curriculum where it seeks to bridge the gap between the expectation of the society of people being employed and people becoming graduate unemployed. So the entrepreneurship, apart from business students that they do it as part of their program, all non-business students, they do entrepreneurship. And the ultimate aim is to help them acquire certain skills that even after school, they can use it for their own work without government employment. And another name for the recommender, we call it ideal curriculum, as construed by curriculum planners. So these are suggestions by planners, individual scholars, teachers, professional associations, and reform commissions. It also referred to as ideal curriculum or curriculum of ideas. And these ideas are reflective of the societal knowledge. So that is recommended for you. Recommended also include some requirements of the state. So for example, those core subjects, these days people are talking about robotics, STEMs, and those things as one of the core areas of secondary education. These are all examples of recommended. So we are saying that stakeholders can recommend a subject or a course or any academic program which is deemed necessary for national identity and security, for environmental protection and sustainable development. Yeah, TVET is not a recommended curriculum. You see, TVET is part of the vocational training, is part of the normal formal training that's
Sir,
Yes, please.
sir, please, I want to ask something. Sir, please, in the course of planning for the curriculum for perhaps the universities and the other tertiary institutions, like those in the teacher training college, sir, with you saying that, or it's been a norm that after you complete university and you don't get a job to do, so would it be a requirement where lecturers could say that the government supporting other colleges of education could perhaps maybe use the money to establish more schools or other businesses, so that instead of paying them, so that when the person completes school, the person could get a work? Rather, could that be a part of a recommendation that maybe will help in the near future?
Yeah, it could be. Instead, that's what Mahama wanted to do before the 2016 that they voted against him. That's what Mahama wanted to do by scrapping the allowance and to build more schools and those things. And you know that in Ghana, when you do something and the opponent want to get the nod, they will incite teachers against you. And so that's what happened. You see, the allowances that are given to the training colleges, it has outlived its usefulness. The purpose of the introduction of that allowance, you know, so may I am one of those who advocate for the fact that the allowances should be stopped and use the money for something better. So those days, you know, we are not can you post you, but then we are so called national service 1 year, what control license. We are crying post you. This is a great part and son away to me. So that's the issue. That's the issue. Any other? Okay. Now, what are some of the educational implications? We are saying that the curriculum makes it possible for regular assessment of the course or program to reflect the needs of the knowledge of the society. You see, don't forget that we are saying that these are recommendations that are made by stakeholders. It could be the society, other body, which deem certain courses or certain area of study as very vital to the growth and development of the society. So we are able to check and see whether things are on course. It helps learners to acquire good behaviors in a society, as is expected of them, especially when the society wants moral training to be taught. Obviously, it will be ensured as a cardinal point of the education system in order to achieve these results. And that's why here social studies, chastity, and all those kind of things that we learn. And so the question is chastity, deviant behavior, how to be so we are being corrupt. So does it mean that what we are learning, we are not making good use of it? Anyway, hence some social roles, such as being a leader in a group or being assigned to students to learn how to tolerate and live harmoniously among their mates and the entire society as a whole, are all a typical things that are acquired during the period of recommended. So we have a lot of work to do as a country and society. The next one is actual operational curriculum. Actual operational curriculum. This refers to the observed curriculum of what actually goes on hour after hour in the classroom. Now, when we say operational or actual, we are talking about the experiences learner acquire in the classroom, minute by minute, seconds by seconds, hour by hour, as the teacher delivers the content. And that is what we call, this is the enacted curriculum, and encompasses what happens in the classroom. So for example, when the teacher is in front of the learner and they are interacting, it's an example of operational curriculum. When learners are given opportunity to contribute, to do group work, group discussion, even their academic learning time, among others, are all examples of operational curriculum. So it represents the totality of all the related curricular transactions that are undertaken by teachers and students in the classroom. That is, it is what actually takes place by means of teaching and learning in a classroom. So some of the education applications include, there is most often a yearning gap between what the official curriculum and the actual or operational curriculum will also do. At times there could be a gap between what the official curriculum will indicate and what will actually prevail in the classroom. And some of the reasons include maybe the leisure time in which school close and end. You see. So the reason that account for this disparity includes the lesser manner in which school terms begin and end. At times, some of the terms is such that the way it is become difficult for you to complete your topics before you leave, which is a problem. Also, the time allotted for exams. So especially look at the shift system, the double track, where people are not able to even go through the content, and now they have to exit and go and write BEC, WASI, and others. These are all very problematic situations that we have been encountered. Unexpected holidays, festival, teacher absenteeism, maternal leave for pregnant mothers and nursing female teachers, marking and supervision of external exam are things that at times create the gap where certain topics in the official are not actualized in the classroom. So some schools may officially also espouse providing all-round education for learners, but they in reality place so much emphasis on few subjects like English and math. When you go to some schools, they even allocate more hours for core subjects than elective subjects. True or false?
It's true.
Yes. Thinking that because it's a core subject, if you don't pass,
So
you
that's
can't
the
go
norm.
for it. But that is wrong. Are you saying that the core is more important than the elective? It's wrong.
So it's because of this thing that sometimes in social studies, students don't take it serious at the JHS. And the only subject that they take it serious is the science and the maths. The rest,
Yeah, because of the premium we have put on some of these subjects.
yes.
As if you don't, that's the end of your life. We shouldn't be so. After all, the person is not even going to do science in the university. He's an art student. See, these are the problems we are having. And look as if that we are not learning the right way. The fact that someone is saying you have to STEM, industrialize, does not mean that copy blindly. Also, the examination system determines to a larger extent what teachers and students concentrate their time and effort on, irrespective of what the official curriculum dictates should be learned. In fact, these days, teachers they have become lottery stickers, and they will be doing payment with WAEC pass questions. You say that, oh, this year, this question by, last year, this question by, and you know, this year, them question never. So now teachers are becoming lottery stickers, doing payment with WAEC pass questions and skewing their learners to WAEC pass questions, all because if they don't pass, they will say their teacher na anyade. Into one train, they are no more in the class, I come another teacher. The teacher, my students, and we baba ko pass here, so I'm on the fridge. Na 1,000 Ghana the account. Alai.
Asemo.
Asam the
But
also.
Doc,
Yes, please.
Doc, please. So all these things that you are saying, I think it's aside from the basis that's from the curriculum planners, they should look at the curriculum again, because with the issue of the science that my colleagues said, and the social studies, in the curriculum itself, it is in that it has allocated more time to science subjects than the other subject areas.
In the curriculum or in the manual, the teacher's manual?
So in the syllable itself, you realize that there's more time for
if
the
that is
course
the
subject.
case, if that is the Yeah, if that's the case, then that is a wrong impression that we are creating as a country. You see, you cannot say that the core subjects are having seen someone who has passed elective math and he has failed core math. You have never seen that before, eh? Hello?
Oh, sir, I've seen one before. Sir, we have, please.
So, if it is the case in the recent curriculum, then I think that we are not also helping the situation. And you see, when people want to have their way, that's what happens. So they will just bring in people that they can maneuver their way through and do things that they think that by putting more emphasis on science and those kind of core subjects, that's where the development will come. It's a wrong impression. It's a wrong notion.
Sir.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir.
Please go
I
ahead.
think the problem also is, I think the problem also is because in Ghana, employment is only skewed towards, how do you call it, the core courses we have. We have a problem of continuity where someone doesn't know what he or she becomes when you're offering social studies. Let's say RME, when you do RME, it is we belittle some of these professions that are linked to all those areas. So everybody wants to become somebody in the future, and we need to believe that the only way you can become somebody meaningful is when you take your, how do you call it, your core subjects seriously. So we don't pay much emphasis on the side, but we have to take it back. The electives they rather tend to help us. When you go to the foreign countries, you know a child, a mother knows
But do you know that in the university, if you are applying to the university and you can pass all your core subjects and fail one of your elective or have D7, you automatically are out of the admission.
very true. Very true.
In the
But
university,
how
in the
you
University
Yes,
of
can
sir.
Cape
process
Coast.
from class one to the GSS one child? That's very true. But it is very difficult
Oh, yeah.
for the
Yeah.
child to understand that even when we are teaching it. If you look at the timetable, we only do social sector. I remember let's say once. Because you see that children are more exposed to the core subject, then placing less emphasis on the little one.
Yeah, so you cannot blame the children. Oh. With this one, you cannot blame the children. For them, they are consumers. As I want to Abraham so so it is from the developers and the ministry who have to have a look and reconciliation for some of these things, not the teachers or the students. They do not have much say. I getting it. Okay,
Yes, but Doc, please, I have another question, please.
go ahead.
Doc, please,
Please
this
go
thing,
ahead.
looking at UCC, you know, the courses that majority of us we are offering. For instance, I have a colleague. He did this distance education, and
Okay.
on the certificate that he's having, they've written educational psychology in English, in English. And this one is to entitle him to teach at the SHS. There is a different person having BEd JHS in English. So this thing says sometimes it's really create a problem. Looking at it, how sometimes the university
When
curriculum
was the
uses
last time? When
a
was the
bit.
last time you saw? When was the last time you saw a code having that program advertised? That program is no more. Those
Oh,
programs of
okay.
psychology is no more. And that program is not meant for you to go and teach at the senior high school. If the person told you
Okay.
that it was meant to go and teach at the senior high school, it wasn't true. In fact, that
Okay,
program
Doc.
it's no more. It's no more there because
Okay.
they had a problem. In fact, that was during Napo's time. During Napo's time, students of that nature even had a problem for postings. They had a problem when it comes to postings because you don't see educational, psychology, English for postings to the senior high school. They had a problem. So right from the time of Napo, it was changed. So now that program is no more.
Okay, Doc.
On
Thank
the
you.
university level, they can quickly change these things, but the basic and those things where, okay, Kofi, your hand is up. If your network, you can type it as you have been doing. I will read it out. Okay. So one way by which the gap between the official curriculum and the actual curriculum can be narrowed is to, one, ask teachers to do manageable work in accordance with their intellectual ability. Also to provide with the requisite teaching aids, resources to enhance their delivery, their lesson delivery. Okay, we are also saying that, let's look at, ironically, the perceived gap between the actual and official curriculum, which might have brought about non-availability of teaching learning resources, rather galvanizes some teachers to exercise innovativeness, inventiveness, initiative to enrich the curriculum instructional process. What it's trying to say is that these non-availability of teaching learning resource at times encourages teachers to think outside the box and innovate and improvise. But that shouldn't always be the case. If teachers need the resources, must provide them. And that's one challenge, I'm afraid, with the current standard base, where we have a new curriculum with a new focus altogether, which must come along with a new structural arrangement in the classroom settings. But we are using our old system classroom setting, large class size in some of these things, which is very, very difficult. So the next one we want to touch on is experiential learned received curriculum. Experiential learned received curriculum. So this refers to what happens to and influences individuals in a classroom as a result of implementing the curriculum. That is what students actually receive and learn, or what learners actually experience in the classroom. So anytime we talk of experiential learned or received, one of the things you must take note as a teacher, it's not everything that you teach in the classroom that students understand. True or false?
True, sir.
It's true.
True.
Yes.
That is true.
Yes. So there are those things that you teach, the lesson that you teach, the aspect of the lesson that the students or the learners understood, they were able to understand, they grasp, that they were able to appreciate and internalize it, is what we term as what? Learned, received, and experienced curriculum. So the ones that they did not understand, that will not fall under learned or received curriculum. So the aspect of the teacher's lesson which students understood, which students were able to appreciate, is what we term as received or learned or experiential curriculum. That's why I say what students actually receive, learn, or what learners actually experience in a classroom. The educational implication is that it helps the teacher to measure how his or her stated instructional objectives have been achieved, and also the outcome of student assessment helps to make an informed decision, because it is through the exercise and those things that students are able to give you the feedback that this is what they were able to achieve as part of the instructional activity. As part of the instructional activity. Okay. Then we have what we call null or untaught curriculum. Null or untaught curriculum. This is part of the plan or the official curriculum which schools do not teach. Thus, the options or perspectives students are not offered or may never know about, much less about to use the concepts and skills that are part of that intellectual repertoire. So it represents the intellectual processes and related content in officially prescribed syllabus, which teachers do not teach. And thus, this may imply that these elements are not important in the educational experience or in our society. So here, what we are briefly saying is that when we talk of untaught or now, it is the part or an aspect of the official or the planned curriculum that teachers do not teach. And at times, whether they don't see it relevant or some teachers too may be handicapped. Because if you're a teacher and you do not have mastery over a certain topic, I don't think you go and teach it to expose your ignorance, your weakness. So at times, it's not because the subject or the topic is not relevant, but at times the teacher is it a phobia in the area. I remember when I went to do my outcome, the geography teacher who was there has taught all the human geography topics in Form 1, leaving the physical and practical. So now the students were in Form 2, and a small boy who was coming to do off-campus teaching practice has to start teaching Form 2 students Form 1 topics, physical and practical. So when the teacher is also do not have command or mastery in a certain topic, he will not. He rather skip the one that he can teach and give the rest to students as a reading assignment for presentations and those things, which at times do not help. Anyway, we come to a presentation. Which also only the fata keniba. In John Banner just like when you were in the colleges, what you were doing. If you say, he said, Kofi, you said a message, let me check. He said, can we also say none now can be because of unavailability of teaching learning resources? Well, you cannot say that because of teaching learning resources, you cannot teach a certain topic. So probably, maybe if the teaching and learning resources is there to enhance the delivery. So this one we are talking about what you don't teach at all. You see, and you cannot say that because you don't have teaching learning resources, you cannot treat this topic. That one there is not acceptable. So even if it's becoming an impediment, it may not be too strong a point. Yeah, lack of interest could be there, but the lack of interest is also by your expertise, your knowledge in the area. When you have knowledge, strong knowledge in the area, your interest will be strong. If not, you will not be motivated to go and teach something that you do not have so much knowledge to expose your ignorance. You wouldn't. So when it happens that we are saying that students are being shortchanged, especially areas that they are not exposed to. And if it happens to come in the WASIO exams, they become the loser, not the teacher. And that's very bad. It's very bad. We're also saying that Most of the things taught in schools nowadays were not selected upon the basis of any careful analysis of the range of alternatives that could be offered, but simply because they have traditionally been on the syllabus or course outline for decades. Then also the deficiencies in teacher training institutions, where teachers are not trained with certain skills or knowledge about certain topics. They wouldn't also go there to teach. Maybe when you do your degree program, most of the topics you were doing were, let's say, human and physical. You didn't do much of practical. Why will you go and teach something that you have no knowledge, you have not been training? So these are all some of the issues. So the solution is for curriculum development to exercise much more imagination and thoroughness in the curriculum planning and design. And there's also the need for teachers not only to clarify what to teach, but also why it must be taught and how. And this requires that teachers must exercise greater ingenuity in their work by working within surrounding constraints and offering learners the kind of exposure that their professional judgment suggests for them. See that teachers will do a lot. The next one is supported curriculum. Supported curriculum, this is a type of curriculum that resources have been made available or provided to assist the implementation of that curriculum. I remember I went for some interview and the professor asked me a question. And the professor's question was this way. There was this teacher who was called Mr. Johnson, who was sent to Elmina Junior High School. Mr. Johnson went to the headmaster requesting for lesson notebook to prepare his lesson the headmaster provided for him. On the day of his lesson delivery, he requested for markers, duster, and the headmaster provided for him, including resources that he needs to. Then the question is, looking at what's the scenario, which type of curriculum will you classify this scenario? So it was so obvious that he was talking about supported what? Supported curriculum. So those resources that are made available to aid the implementation of the curriculum, that's what we term as supported curriculum. That's why I say it just deals with the issue of areas of the curriculum which actually receive financial, material, and human support from government and other stakeholders to ensure effective implementation. Now, what is the educational application? We are saying that qualified and certified teachers are to be provided with incentives to motivate them to implement the curriculum effectively. And also, instructional activities are hindered when the needed instructional resources or material needed are not available for a new program design and vice versa. And also, absence of support from both government and stakeholders in education make the implementation difficult and vice versa. Hey, Stephen, not to support and incentives, then you
Oh,
and so
Doc, in your.
professional allowance, I yes, more when you put the one fan professional train, obese or the actual rent. It was not meant for rent.
Said bet your school fees. Said bet your school fees.
Yo. And say, who the year school this year? It's a form of professional aid.
Exactly.
Then the problem that they are also cultural renting.
So you move busy to your school fees.
Didn't now come. Why are they? Then the last.
So say, oh, this would be my girlfriend.
Obviously, didn't they? Only damn and a girlfriend. Also, be the damn and a girlfriend.
Now that man go.
Yo, in this age and era, yeah, investment to a girlfriend.
Girlfriend. And you answer.
Yo, Odu and as a girlfriend is showing this smoothness level. I want to go say within some phone. Okay, so we are talking about hidden curriculum. Now, hidden curriculum is a type of curriculum. You see, the word is saying hidden. So with the hidden curriculum, you see, this we are talking about certain actions and inactions of the teacher, which indirectly students learn from, or students emulate or copy without the teacher intentionally communicating to the student that copy from me. That's all called hidden. That's why we are saying that it is unwritten, unspoken, and unacknowledged assumptions, norms, and expectations that heavily influence life of the student and the climate of the school. So, for example, the way the teacher dress. If you're a teacher who is always tucking in, dressing decently in class, automatically some students also look at you and they begin to dress what? Gentle or decently, without you telling them. Maybe certain lipstick that you use can also entice students to do same because they know that you are their role model. That's why we are saying that at times students can learn good and bad behaviors. So if you are the teacher who have been selling your students to go and buy your good D soccer, those sashi ones, now they are one man envelope, on fancy envelope in Fambra. You are teaching him how to also drink a good D. So with the hidden curriculum, it is not usually intentional and overtly included in the planned curriculum or the official curriculum. But the students learn them because of the way the school life is structured. So what we are saying that the hidden curriculum refers to the behaviors, the attitude, and knowledge the culture of the school intentionally, unintentionally teaches the learner. So what are some of the educational implications? We are saying that, one, learners are able to acquire certain behaviors and habits by observing and imitating the character of their teachers. That's why as a teacher, you need to be very careful with the things you say, with the way you dress, and the way some of the conversation you have when learners are there is very important. Certain social roles and appropriate gender roles are also learned, especially where we live in a community, mostly in a class. They will tell you that when it gets to Fridays, yes, the guys should go for cutlass and go and weed. And the ladies should sweep the classroom and clean the louvers, giving an impression that there are certain difficult jobs that are meant for guys and others for ladies. So students pick up attitude and behavior such as how to cooperate with others, learning values of work, respect towards authority, and the rule of law. And some students also learn how to smoke, drink hard liquor, engage in immoral activities, cheat, steal other people's property, disrespect for mathematics and other subjects. And also positively, learners also learn a great deal when their teachers involve them in determining the content of the subject they need to learn. So these are some of the educational implications so far as the subject is concerned. The last type of curriculum I want to talk about is the integrated curriculum. Now, when we say integrated, we are talking about blending or fusing. When you say something integrate is to blend, is to mix or fuse. So integrated curriculum is a type of curriculum where various ideas, concepts from different across subject areas or matters are bring together to ensure a holistic dissemination of knowledge to students. So, because when you look at that, the integrated curriculum views learning and teaching as a holistic way and reflects the real world, which is more interactive in nature. The individual learner is exposed to a wider range of ideas and concepts that helps to broaden their perspective and horizon when it comes to the subject area. Now, let's look at various types of integration. Under the integrated curriculum, there are a number of types. There are three main types. We have what we call the multidisciplinary integration. And under the multidisciplinary, we have what we call intradisciplinary. Then we have interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. So we have multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary. Now, when we say multidisciplinary integration, this is a type of integration where we first identify the discipline or the subject. That's why I say it focuses primarily on the disciplines. So then you organize the standard from the disciplines around a team. So what we do here when you are using multidisciplinary is to first identify all the subjects or the disciplines. Then after identifying the disciplines or the subject, you look out for a central theme or idea that is common in all the subjects that you have identified. Then from there, that is where you do the integration around. That's why I say this approach draws on a comprehension of many disciplines, yet stays within the discipline boundaries. In this approach, a central theme is identified and it is used to organize and correlate the subject being integrated. For example, force can be recognized by learners that it is seen in a number of what subjects. For example, you can see force in science, geography, social studies, and music. That means that if you are doing multidisciplinary organization among science, geography, social studies, and music, force could be the central theme. So look at this. For example, let me show you this diagram. Look at this diagram. So you could see that we have all the subjects and a central theme. So the central theme could be force. So we look at music. Can we see force in music? English, can we? Science, geography, physical education, math, design and technology, history, drama. Can we see force in the? So when we're able to deduce all these central things, which become the force, and that become the focus of the organization or the integration of the curriculum. So that's what we call the multidisciplinary. But like I said, within the multidisciplinary, there's another concept called intradisciplinary. Intradisciplinary approach is where within a subject, we identify sub-disciplines or sub-concepts within a subject. So a typical example is social studies. Social studies is an example of intradisciplinary integrated curriculum. Simple because within social studies, we are able to integrate or discover or identify sub-disciplines like history, geography, economics, and what government. Some we may even add sociology. When it comes to geography, we are able to identify physical geography, we are able to identify human or regional, we are able to identify practical or map work. When it comes to integrated science, you can identify biology, chemistry, physics, and even agriculture. English, you can have reading, writing, oral communication like comprehension, composition, grammar, among others. So when teacher integrates sub-disciplines within a subject area, they are using what we call interdisciplinary integration. Any question on the two before I add up? Any question? Okay. Now let's look at interdisciplinary integration. This is inter, between two subjects. Now note the difference. Whilst multidisciplinary emphasizes on the subject, identifying the subject first, interdisciplinary do not place emphasis on the subject. For them, their emphasis is on the interdisciplinary skill, concept, or ideas that are found in each of the two subjects, which become the focus of integration and not the subject. That's why I say in the interdisciplinary integration, the teacher organizes the curriculum around common learning across discipline. And this common learning include maybe certain skills, certain ideas, certain concepts. So it emphasizes interdisciplinary skills and concepts students must acquire. The disciplines are identifiable, but they assume less importance than that of the multidisciplinary approach. So it is an assemblage. Interdisciplinary integration is an assemblage of ideas, concepts, skills, thought systems that are derived from different or separate disciplines. So separate discipline, you identify the skills there, there's skill in other, then you bring them together for the integration. Unlike the multidisciplinary, whose emphasis is first to identify the subject, the discipline, and see which central idea run through all the disciplines. But in the interdisciplinary, the emphasis is not on the subject. The emphasis is on the interdisciplinary, the skill set, the ideas, the knowledge, the thoughts, and the concepts which are seen in both of the separate disciplines. So for example, one discipline you can identify, let's say, communication skill, creativity skill, another one, adaptability skill, or emotional intelligence skill. Then you bring all of them together, and that becomes the focus of the organization. Unlike the multidisciplinary that you identify one central team that must run through all the subjects. And the essence of the interdisciplinary curriculum is to enable learners to solve a problem or to find answers to issues in the world of practical applications by resorting to knowledge derived from more than one discipline. Hence, the teacher also focuses on the big ideas in the concept of, so that, for example, various big ideas, when you are talking about concepts of evaporation, condensation, thermal energy, those big ideas that can be used as a focus of organizing the various curriculum learnings. So this is a diagram that gives you the picture of, so you could see that the integration is based on the interdisciplinary skills like literacy, thinking skills, numeracy, research skills. Unlike the multidisciplinary, the first identifying the subject and separate. So this one is separately. Multidisciplinary is together. The subjects are done together to see the central thing among each of them. But in the interdisciplinary, those fishing out of those skills and those concepts can be done separately. Then we have the last one, which is the transdisciplinary integration. Transdisciplinary integration. Now, here teachers organizes the curriculum around students' questions and concerns. So here there's nothing like the subject to identify as compared to the multi and the interdisciplinary. Here, the curriculum is organized around student questions they ask, their concerns, the issues that they raise, that become the fulcrum for the integration to be done. So students develop life skills as they apply interdisciplinary and disciplinary skills in a real life context. So one of the two approaches that are used in the transdisciplinary integration is the use of negotiating the curriculum, or what's called negotiated curriculum, and project-based learning. Project-based learning, where students tackle a local problem and some school, and they deal with it in that by doing, they transfer the skills and knowledge they have to be able to solve the problem. Then when we talk of negotiated curriculum is a dynamic process in which what is taught and learned, that is the curriculum, is discussed between the teacher and the student, rather than being the sole predetermined or sole preserved by the teacher to determine. So what to learn, how to learn is determined by both the teacher and the learner. It is not the teacher who decides what to teach and what not to teach. And that's what we mean by negotiated curriculum. So that is the reflection of the transdisciplinary. So in brief, what we are saying that whilst the multidisciplinary integration focuses on the subject, you identify the subject first, and now I identify the commonality or the central theme or idea from all the subjects to do the integration. When it comes to interdisciplinary, the emphasis is not the subject. You don't need to identify the subject first. What you need is the skill sets that are derived from both subjects. In fact, in the interdisciplinary, it can be done separately, whilst the multidisciplinary is supposed to be done collectively. The transdisciplinary, the integration is done, organization of curriculum is done based on student questions or issues that they raise, and that becomes the fulcrum for the organization of the curriculum. So these are the three types of the integrated curriculum. Any question up to this point?
No questions, sir.
Okay. So if
Sir, okay.
there are no questions, we'll end it here. Next week, we'll look at how to develop a curriculum. Then, after developing the curriculum, we'll look at how do you implement what you have developed. So next, we'll be looking at curriculum development. How do we develop a curriculum for an institution? The things we go through. Then we'll look at curriculum implementation. Having developed the curriculum, what do? You have to put it to use. What are some of the things we pay attention to? So that's what we'll discuss next week. Then we'll be left with the last unit, which is curriculum evaluation. And that will be all for the course. So I'm sure next week we'll be able to tackle 2. Then the last meeting we'll be able to finish up the course. Okay, Osman, you wanted to say something?
Yes, please. I want to thank you for your teaching. Thank you. And then, please, with regard to the slides too, that is what I wanted to prompt you after you are done with everything.
Yeah, I'll let you have it.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, sir. Okay, sir. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. May God bless you.
So what you have to do is that those who have the materials, please make sure right after each unit, solve the review questions in there. Likewise, the objective questions is very important. Okay. So thank you very much. We'll meet God willing next week to do what we call curriculum development
Sir,
process.
please, I will
How do we
send you
develop curriculum?
hi for.
Okay.
Doc, please, I'll send you hi for the slide, and I need one, so I'll call you.
Okay.
Bye.
That's-
Sinastivo. Hello, Sinastivo.
Stephen, listen, someone is calling you.
Sinastivo, can you promise whether you can get me one of the curriculum book so that I pay for? You see, I didn't receive one of the curriculum books, so maybe if you can.
Okay, so Stephen, let's do it this way.
Yes, sir.
You can collect those who need some, so that I'll know the number